been going on in Baltimore? Bridgemont.
Man, the people are finally resisting and demanding justice. And some white people don't like it.
Some white people. Do you know any of these white people?
Resisting what exactly? What have people been resisting in Baltimore?
Systematic oppression by a government entity via the Baltimore police force.
And so they've been going out and hurling stones and destroying police property, and this is a good thing.
This is a reaction to a social injustice.
And it's also a fraction of what's going on. Most of the protests are peaceful, and we've had protests now in a lot of cities in the United States, and to the point that it's really becoming a national movement. And people are paying attention. I mean, even Hillary Clinton gave an address on this, and that's when you know something's happening.
That's when Joey got on board.
That's when no, I've been on board with this for a while, but this is the thing. I'm so glad to see that people are finally taking this issue seriously, because for the longest time it seemed like only the black community was taking this seriously, and everybody else was acting like it wasn't an issue or that they weren't aware of it. So it's very good that more people are becoming aware of this issue. We have a lot of racial bias in this country that does have an impact in our police force, and there's a lot of things that the police do that are overly aggressive, that are inappropriate, and our people are better than that. Our police can be much better than that, and there's a lot of good cops in the system too, but we need to address these concerns, because right now there's a lot of people that do not trust the cops, and it's creating a lot of problems, and there are some cops that are not acting the way that they should.
Yeah, and I know that Bridgemont and Brown are going to want to go at it, so I'll say my piece and let them have at each other, but I think, first of all, it's been very disappointing to see many people on the conservative side of the aisle who have basically just defended the police actions no matter what, even though the city of Baltimore had settled lawsuits about throwing the people in the back of these vans and driving them recklessly and injuring them. There was a fellow that died, I think became a quadriplegic and died because of that. So it's not an unusual situation, as has happened before. And in the case of Mr. Gray, that was the man that was killed, he was not like being arrested, like resisting arrest. It was not like a Michael Brown where he robbed somewhere and there was a whole conflict.
I mean, Brown didn't rob anything, but there's some debate that maybe they did something illegal. In this case, Mr. Gray did not.
Right.
He was, I believe, arrested for carrying a legal knife. Right. He had the right to carry. It wasn't. I mean, it's a Second Amendment issue, if nothing else. So I mean, it's just very disappointing.
Where's the NRA on that one?
Yeah, it's very disappointing to see the conservative movement, when they talk about this concern about a police state and all this kind of stuff, and of course they talk about Second Amendment rights, but then you have this kind of situation, police state abuse, and then of course I think that they feel like those rights are reserved for the people the Constitution was originally written for. And I think also that the Fraternal Order of Police ought to be ashamed of themselves for defending these. They're a scab union. They're defending these officers. They don't even know the details of the case. They're just like, we support our officers blindly, and that's the only profession. Like, and if you go back to the Atlanta cheating scandal, you did not see the teachers union stand up for anybody. Yeah. But automatically, every time you're gonna have the police users coming in, and police are absolved of all wrongdoing. Yeah, and I would say what you're seeing in Baltimore is going to continue to happen in more cities, and it's going to continue to grow and occur because we're not addressing these issues. We're not addressing this is my life. I think the rioting that occurred is stupid and it was pointless, and all it did was change the dynamics so that people are more likely to side with the authorities and more likely to side with the government. And I think things like curfew and stuff are very concerning on issues like martial law. It's very frightening. And the other thing I want to touch on before we cut is Baltimore had some of the most anti-youth laws in the nation before these riots occurred. Last fall, they passed a youth curfew
you're ageist
law
too, man. I don't want to hear it. That
required
shit about Bernie Sanders being old. Fuck the youth, dude.
How's that relevant to the conversation? They required youth, I believe, under the age of 16 to be indoors by 10 p.m. where the police could pick them up. And it's that type of egregious law that I think also led to a lot of the tensions in the street, that led to primarily youth that were doing this violence. I mean, it's certainly wrong, and I think it's just selfish behavior. I posted the Sublime song about the Rodney King riots in '92, and basically that's the whole point of that song too, is it's just people trying to get theirs while there's a social conflict going on. But again, most people have been peaceful, most people have been in the streets, and it's very simple. If we don't fix the inequality in these communities, and we don't fix the mistreatment of minorities and of youth and of the poor, and lock them in basically these ghettos. Cities like Baltimore, cities like Atlanta, Detroit, Los Angeles, and those routes are going to continue to get worse because you cannot lock people in a ghetto
Brian, man.
and then expect them not to be
Brian's been
angry.
holding this Red Bull can patiently for a while.
Yeah, he's got the conch.
We are officially endorsed by Red Bull, and Plutocracy Now wants you to buy Red Bull today.
Oh, God.
And also
Oh.
Scott wants you to love the unions, and notice it was the police workers union
They're a scab union.
who's always standing up to support
I
police
think we talked about
brutality.
unions. Didn't we talk about this when we talked about unions?
Yes.
I'm just pointing that out, Scott.
I didn't say I support the role that the work unions have in representing the working classes.
Yeah, that they're representing the working class police officers by making these statements.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean I agree.
Yeah,
I'm saying in general.
Police gives money to
They're
Republicans.
they're
They're scab
defending
unions.
criminals.
And we should basically expect them to always be on side of the cops anyway, so we shouldn't really give that, you know.
And that's true, but I don't think they should be so in the forefront of. So they shouldn't be so vocal. I understand supporting people because there are child molesters that teachers usually support when they get found as child molesters.
I mean, I'm not going to defend them, so I don't know. Let's talk about something else, Brian.
I largely agree with what Joey said. I largely agree with what Steen said. My problem is, first of all, Freddie Gray's problem, first of all, which is, yes, the police do act like sometimes that they're just cold, militaristic dicks. In my interactions with police officers, whether they pull me over for, not wearing my seatbelt if I forget to put it on, I would say about half of the police that I've directly interacted with are understandable, polite professionals. I would say the other half are kind of cold, unprofessional, or potentially just dicks. And so when you have so many cops out there who unfortunately, maybe they're a veteran of an unnecessary war where they've been psychologically abused through these horrible actions of having to kill people for their jobs. They come back to the Atlanta streets, they come back to the streets across the nation, and they're supposed to be the professionals guarding public safety. It's really an unfortunate situation.
And this is the problem with police, is that it's not all police officers are bad, not all police officers are good. It's a mixed bag. But the problem is that type of profession, because of the power and the respect that it involves, tends to attract people with an authoritarian mindset. And the fact is, the community, especially the white middle class community and the upper class as well, has encouraged a more authoritarian police for many, many years, because they're like, oh, we don't want these poor blacks in our area. We want to keep down on crime. The politicians, of course.
Well, if you look at the difference in the way neighborhoods are policed.
Yeah, exactly.
If you look,
so
we've
encouraged it. We've encouraged the authoritarian behavior of the police, and that's why you see people behaving like the officers in the situation, Mr. Gray, and not like Andy Griffith, for example, in the Andy Griffith show. Where if you ever watch that show, I mean, I know it's a TV show, but even still,
and the excuse is, this community is plagued with drugs and whatever else. But when I went to Dunwoody High School, that was the first time that I ever met somebody that cultivated marijuana. That was the first time I ever seen Adderall. That's the first time I ever met somebody who used cocaine.
Dunwoody High School is a
drugs.
really nice area, right?
It's like the premier area of DeKalb County.
Rich people do more drugs. That's a fact.
They buying all the drugs. The Mexican cartels aren't bringing the drugs in this country because all the black people are doing them.
And in fact, I'll just touch on that too. People were praising the Bloods and Crips street gangs for kind of like promoting.
What?
Yeah, there was a legitimate praise for the street gangs.
As they should be, though.
And also the clergy
Joey.
for trying to bring quote unquote peace to the riots in the community and bring a reconciliation between the authorities and people in the community. But the thing is that it was manipulative, because they wanted to end these riots because the white people that went to those communities to buy drugs, which was one of their primary sources of income as street gangs, were scared off from doing it. So that's the thing, is these, whether it be the clergy or these street gangs, you have to look. These are the type of people that are trying to keep the black community down, trying to keep the poor and disadvantaged people down. They want the status quo. And I think hopefully the community can realize that.
I don't necessarily believe that. I believe that a lot of these people who got together are tired. They're tired of the black on black crime being the excuse and the reason every time a black man is killed. So why don't we? And this is something that's happened nationally. Here in Atlanta, there wasn't any coverage of it on the media, but the Nation of Islam, the
They're
gangster disciples.
They're all on the
Bloods,
payroll
Crips.
of the police.
But they've got together. They have got together and collect. No, they're not on. They are under the eye of the police. They are being watched as much as the CIA watches a terrorist organization.
They've cut a deal with the police to allow them to continue to operate in return for cooperation.
have a
That's-
larger
that happens
community
a lot.
out.
I mean, it's not a purely racial issue. It's not purely age issue. You have to break the status quo. We have to eliminate these ghettos. We have to eliminate this. Basically, this resegregation we've seen in society with the schools and everything else, because people are never going to get out of this lifestyle.
Well, that's because the neighborhoods back in the 70s and 80s, more financial institutions used redlining
That's right.
to.
Was that in the 70s or 80s or the 40s and 50s?
Nah, it was like 60s, 70s.
Post civil rights.
It was post civil rights, yeah. Like
Okay.
when integration developed, but this was a reaction to integration. Okay, since now you can move in our neighborhood, we're just gonna.
Okay,
We're
okay.
going. They had the
That shit
realtors.
happened later than that.
Yeah.
Be real. That shit.
It happened today.
Yeah,
It happens today.
Some places it definitely.
That's why gentrification exists.
Citation
It's
needed.
a reaction to redlining. So when you put a bunch of people who are from the same race and the same economic class and a given area, you create a ghetto within itself.
That's right. And
Hey.
people aren't.
So Brian, are you trying to say
exposed
something?
to
You're sitting here holding the.
Yeah, I would like to say something. I was looking at Bridgewan's Facebook feed over the last week or so, and I noticed he changed his profile picture from his normal,
Face.
normal face to one where he's wearing a gas mask, kind of in protest mode and whatnot, kind of supporting
I've
the
changed
revolution.
it back since the announcement of the indictments.
Okay, excellent, great. And some of these kinds of things that Bridgewan was
Systemic
sharing
injustice is over
on
now?
his...
No, it's not over. It's we're on the right path towards this. So I can take
In
off the
this
mask.
one case, maybe.
I
but
could, but I can take off the mask at this point and see.
do you
where we
really
go
think?
from
What do
here.
you think's gonna happen? You don't think it's a token?
I think first and foremost, I will say that I'm very wary of the way the charges were, because they said that the guy who's driving the van is responsible for the murder, when clearly on tape you see that Freddie Gray was paralyzed before he even got in the van. So that's an inconsistency there, which might lead to an acquittal. And it's, to me, it seems like you have, there's 3 black officers and 3 white officers, and what it seems to me is that the 5 officers who were on the scene have conspired and formulated a story against the driver of the van.
That's right, and I think the problem is, again, it's not purely race. It's just the fact that the police seem to be able to operate with impunity. That's why there's a Chris Rock joke. He said, people talk about black on black crime and things like that, but when a black man kills another black man, he probably don't go to jail if it's actually investigated.
Right.
Versus when a white man kills a black man, or an officer kills a black man, white or black or Hispanic, a lot of times they don't. They just get a slap on the wrist, or they get away with it, and that shouldn't be acceptable. If anything, the police should be held to a higher standard, because if we're giving them lethal weapons, we're giving them the right to detain people, to arrest people, to involve themselves in their affairs, and in many cases involve themselves in their lives, to pull a vehicle over, to these kind of things that regular citizens cannot do.
To
legally.
seize your property.
Yeah, if you're going to give them those rights, the expectation needs to be higher. Just like with the military has a code of conduct.
And we
If
talk
you're
about
going to
that.
give somebody
I just want to say, you have a lot of people who talk about conspiracies. They talk about 9/11, Roswell, JFK, but nobody ever talks about the conspiracies that happen every single day within these small police departments.
That's right.
It's rampant.
I will
seizures
speak
and
of
things
one.
like that.
Brian's
I will
got-
speak of one. I have a friend who is a
Right.
East Point detective. Yes, what do you want to tell me, Scott?
That rebel.
So I have a friend who's an East Point detective, and several years ago, when the East Point Police Department was City Hall was like, "Oh, we're $5 million short. We're $5 million in the hole, and we don't know where that money went." So what they did was that my friend, who worked as a detective, kind of a truancy detective, making sure kids are going to school, he had to work weekends going around writing tickets, so that way they could raise revenue and
and that's
make
what
the
a lot
books.
of people don't trust the police, because a lot of what they do is they're forced to do for funding
Quotas.
reasons, and that's the problem.
Exactly, and my friend was very disheartened by this. He said,
Another form of taxation.
I wish I worked for a larger police department where I couldn't see how corrupt it actually is.
I was talking about this today with a friend of mine. I think it would be better if people paid an extra tax on their tag or on their insurance instead of having all these red light cameras and tickets like that, because it does create a situation of unfair policing.
Well, the thing about a red light camera is a red light camera is not going to racial profile anybody. Yeah. So,
I'm just saying the example he was talking about, but I just think, look, the point being is we need to change the mindset.
All right, so in Cleveland, I just want to point this out real quick. In Cleveland right now, there's a I guess there was a shooting where a cop shot and killed 2 unarmed citizens. And apparently he was friends. I met the dude's brother. One of my good friends was friends, with his brother, and so met him a couple times. And he recalls when he first became a cop, he said, "I can't wait to pistol whip some motherfucker." And the dude was obviously just insane and should have never been a cop. So, I just wanted to throw that out there real quick. But second, I want to bring this back to Baltimore. And, what you guys think there's going to be more riots in other cities? We've got all these same economic situations. We've got the same systemic situations across the country.
Different because Baltimore has been policed in a way that is overtly corrupt for so long that
there's a lot of cities.
But what I'm saying, it's not unique. But the corruption there is like you go back to the Nigerian conversation we had earlier. It's like it's so much corruption going on within that police department. Like people say, why did he run? That's because it's likely that they know who you are and they can plant some drugs on you. Why not run? Every time if I know that I've been in trouble with the law before they know who I am, they say, okay, they're going right there. They have drugs in the car. They have them. They have drugs. They plant drugs on people every single day.
Not to mention it's fight or flight. A lot of times if you're in a stressful situation, you just run out of natural instinct.
I'm just saying when the police get behind me, there's this feeling that goes to my stomach. It's like really, I get really scared.
I get that. It takes a lot to scare me. Brian, you keep.
I get that feeling too, and I'm white. Yeah. I just want to say that, but also sometimes people do run from the police as a decoy strategy for their friend who might be holding something. So I'm just saying that running from the police could be part of a more criminal kind of entrepreneurial thing.
Or it could be a reaction to corruption by police forces.
That's very true. I can concede that as well. I'm glad you can notice that running from the cops can be an effective decoy.
Of course, if I have dope on me, yes, I'm going to run. But the reason why I am selling dope is systematic as well.
Or you might want your friend to run if he's not holding the dope.
Anyway, Brian, make a better point. Make a better point.
So, Bridgemont has posted up in this last week. I understand emotions are high, and I even read the Salon article, "Dear White Facebook Friends, I need you to respect what Black America is feeling right now." So I've read the article. I understand.
Well, what do you think?
I understand. But Bridgemont, I do want to pick on Bridgemont because he's been posting these things that are incendiary, such as, I will quote, so you can't get mad at me if an N-word slips, I will quote, "Negroes, sweet and docile, meek, mumble, and kind, beware the day they change their..." Yes, and this is a Langston Hughes quote. And, it gets better. "They want us to be good, docile niggers so bad." He's shared that. And
That's
then
true,
he also... And then he pretty much endorsed rioting by sharing someone else's feed who disagreed with the idea that rioting is wrong. So by logical conclusion, rioting is now correct.
What did I share?
And then, no, I am not done.
Please explain what I shared.
I am not
done.
Don't
say I endorsed rioting without saying what it was.
And then, I'm not done. He also shared the specific address in Baltimore for a Sally Mae and said, "Well, I just want to say that,
you're upset about that. Is that what you're really mad?
I'm just saying.
I didn't know you had so much love for Sally Mae.
And then he shared a picture of a white cop on a dog and said, "This is going to be I quote, "This is the picture that's going to make white people say these cops have gone too far."
Did not make you mad. That picture made you mad, didn't it?
Which I will say, No. That's racist. You're pretty much putting
speciesist,
all
man.
white people. You're putting,
stand up for these dogs.
I'm
Man,
not
these dogs
done.
got no voices. These dogs can't stand.
Yes.
I know,
Could have aimed one more oppressed group.
I know Scott was gonna do that because he cares more about dogs than people in general.
Here's
Bridgemon, I know, has a very black constituency on his Facebook likes and on his Facebook feed. And I was disappointed by the quality of his discourse because he's pretty much putting white people out there like, oh, they don't care about black people. Oh, rioting's okay. And well, I agree with Bridgemon on so many things, but when you're actually going to go this far, you're going to alienate the moderate.
Guess what? But let me say this. Let me say this. There has never been in the existence of history any substantial social movement that was not did not use violence.
Yeah.
It has never. You can say Martin Luther King didn't use violence, but he used the violence
the
of the
Nation
oppressor.
of Islam sure did.
He used the violence of his oppressor.
Yeah, but the
to
more you
demonstrate-
use it, the more chances that you're going to turn into a failure and a fascist regime. Anyway, I want to say something. I want to quote some radical black militant real quick. Hold on. While no one condones looting, one can understand the pent-up feelings that may result from decades of repression and people who have had members of their family killed by that regime, for them to be taking their feelings out on that regime. I mean, do you disagree with that statement?
No, I completely
who do you think
understand,
would've said
and I
that?
think
Donald
it's absurd.
Rumsfeld.
Hold on.
Donald Rumsfeld said that.
Here's my concern.
Donald Rumsfeld.
And I
2003, when Iraqis started rioting.
Yeah, he's
2003.
Donald
alright.
Rumsfeld said that.
Here's my concern. I think
He's got some good ones.
again, I don't like condemn the community for rioting like they weren't necessarily somewhat justified or didn't have a cause for it. My concern is I feel like this is going to lead to more riots because if they're getting the prosecutions in this case, people are going to look at that and say, hey, if we go burn some shit, then we're going to get these people prosecuted.
This is the first time it's happened. It only happened
Yeah,
because
that's the thing.
you have a
Michael,
city.
Michael Brown's the guy that shot Brown. I can't remember his name right now.
Darren
And
Wilson.
Zimmerman also. Zimmerman didn't get convicted. Wilson was not prosecuted, and there weren't necessarily riots in any of those cases.
Oh,
But in
Ferguson.
Baltimore,
Ferguson was a riot.
Ferguson, they
Ferguson
kinda-
was worse.
They burned
Ferguson
some
is
shit
worse than-
down, dude.
They make it seem like
Well-
all of Baltimore is burning. It's like a couple blocks.
What
it's
I'm
like one
saying is
area.
this. My
The whole
concern
West
is-
Florissant is gone.
Steen has a legitimate
My
concern.
concern is that the media and the way it's being constructed is going to make people thought they can do this again. I think it's stupid because all it's going to do is lead to martial law.
Okay.
If it changes
And
the
that's-
law,
and that's the- okay,
eventually
can I-
they're just going to start shooting people in the street.
This is the
My
end
And
game.
why
second
is that not
point
what we're
is-
talking about?
My
There's
second
soldiers.
point is that I think going back to what Bridgemont his Facebook quotes about docile and all that, I feel like the number one way to fix this is for black people to own more guns. It's one thing if the white
I
community
agree.
have guns,
Oh,
but
shit.
if the black, especially young black men,
Legal gun ownership.
I'm not
Ryan's
talking
getting
about
nervous.
Legal gun ownership.
I'm not talking about buying guns out of a truck of cars. I'm talking about if they openly exercise their
The
Second
Second
Amendment
Amendment.
rights and can concealed carry or open carry, I don't care. But the people can carry a firearm and then
Now
And
now
they-
who's
and
being
the police
incendiary?
Knew that?
But-
No, it would change the power.
But
dynamic.
you know what? We did that. We did that in the 70s.
It's power dynamic.
And you know what the NRA did? Drafted the Brady Bill.
That's right. It's simple power dynamic.
The
police-
start getting pushback from the NRA.
Yeah, you start getting pushed back from the NRA.
If the police know that the community tends to have firearms, they're going to approach that community differently. Just like they approach white people differently than they do black people. If they think that black
I
people are
hope
going to be
that
disarmed
that's-
and they can beat them over the head with nightsticks, then that's what they're going to do.
I know
Steen,
that-
that's an interesting proposal. I just don't want American society more awash in guns. My understanding is that the sociologists who study this issue say that we're too awash in guns and that contributes to gun
With
violence.
the white community, but it's a power dynamic issue. The black community needs to own firearms so they can match the power dynamic of both the white community that oppresses them and
I
the
already
police.
heard you say that,
I'm
and
not
what I'm
calling for
saying.
shootouts. I'm just talking about having it. I'm not saying
Yeah,
use it.
I heard you. That's
They're
the third
gonna
time
get-
you've said it.
When guns are around, they get used, and if police aren't around,
guns
then
tend to get used
But-
when people have it.
that's gonna
What
be
I'm-
messy. I would
what
think.
I'm saying
Union
is-
gun club.
But-
What I'm saying
Yeah.
is maybe we
I mean,
need
it's messy
more
now,
specific
so.
police training. Police obviously have been too brutal and are not caring for human lives.
But
Maybe
they're not
police.
gonna change.
Hold on, I'm not. Please stop interrupting me. Maybe police need some sort of kind of like a quasi EMT training. There have been lots of people lately who, like the guy in the chokehold. this guy Freddie Gray bouncing around in the back of a van, and so like obviously police are not caring for human lives. Maybe they need to be trained like firefighters are to be first responders.
First and foremost, they need to be trained longer than 9 months. And that's you have to begin with that. It's easier. You have to go to school longer to defend or prosecute the law than you do to enforce it. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Of all the social revolutions that have been launched and carried out in the United States, none of them have been driven by violence.
The American Revolution.
Excuse me. Of all the in our democratic history in the United States, we've never had a movement of violence.
The labor movement.
The labor movement was largely peaceful.
No, it wasn't. People got killed. People died.
But that's not the reason. That's not the reason that it succeeded.
Yes,
it
it is.
succeeded
That's
because they won the hearts and minds
Yes,
over
it is.
people.
To Joey's point,
through
society
peaceful
was a lot
movements.
more violent. We were a lot more callous, and society was a lot different then.
Well, society has always been
Here's the
and
thing.
remained violent to us.
Here's the thing.
You know?
They did not kill other people or do violence
Yes,
in
they
order.
did. Yes,
No.
they did.
Hold on, you're not letting me finish my statement.
sorry.
They did not kill everybody that disagreed with them. Does that make sense? They're not just killing everybody
Who was
and
killing
then
everybody that disagreed with them?
no, but that's what I'm saying. Is that
We're not calling
violence?
for genocide.
No, but because all what I heard from over here was that violence is needed in order to make sure that this goes through, and what I'm saying is that
I
that's
don't think
not the
violence is
case.
needed.
I'm not saying
Violence
it's
is
needed.
not
It's
how-
a necessary component to any social change. It's a necessary
No,
component.
that's what I'm saying.
all those-
It's not a
it's not.
necessary.
Remember all those
When
words?
hasn't it been?
The gay
When
rights
hasn't
movement.
it
The gay
been?
rights movement has been very successful.
No,
They
the
did not
right- what
require
happened in New
killings.
York?
Yeah, they
What happened in New York?
Stonewall riots.
They Stonewall riots.
But that's not
Stonewall
right.
riots.
The- the- Here's the thing: the Stonewall riots are not why gay marriage is widely accepted in the United States today.
That's not true. That's how.
No,
how
that's
the
it. That's
movement
absolutely
started.
absurd that
That's
you
the
have to
birth
go
of
out
the-
This
and
is
kill
the birth
people.
of the LGBT
Hold on.
movement.
I just want everyone to take a second and remember all the riots that happened to legalize weed in Colorado and California.
All right, yeah. All right.
I want to
I'll
take.
give you that one. I'll give you that one.
I'm all for the protests that are happening in Baltimore and elsewhere that are peaceful. They're peacefully assembled, where they're not burning down buildings or hurting people.
Guess what, man? This
Boring.
country was founded by rioters. These people,
That's right. That's right.
France.
We
was-
weren't a democracy
France,
back
a
then.
riot.
We're a democracy now.
Russia, a riot.
Abraham
you know
Lincoln
what?
said we should not appeal to the bullet. We should appeal to the ballot.
But he had a war.
Yeah, but
He had a war in slavery.
Bernie
But that's
Sanders
the
isn't going to
thing.
get the Democratic nomination, so fuck the
The
ballot.
South tried to make change through violence and they failed.
The-
And in fact, it backfired on them.
No, the South tried to prevent change.
Exactly.
The
by using
North
violence.
instituted
They tried
violence
to
to-
No,
prevent change
yeah,
by
come
inciting
on now.
violence.
I mean,
And it failed.
John Brown started that shit. People,
Violence.
Yeah, and
Violence.
Turner.
Violence.
I mean, the South was totally happy. The South wasn't like, oh, we need to have war with the North to make them own slaves. Like,
slave
they didn't give a
rebellion
shit.
and John Brown. Yeah,
And
violence.
remember, Lincoln was the one that cracked down.
I
on
don't think-
rioting in
I
the
think,
North.
you
They
know,
had the New York drive.
Nonviolence is, though, if you look at history.
And that's one more example of where riots did not solve anything. The New York draft riots were
Riots
awful.
don't solve anything. Riots are a side effect of the problem. Like
Right.
MLK
Right,
said,
that's
what I'm
riots are the
saying.
All right, as
voice
long
of
as we
the
agree that
unheard.
It
riots
sounds
don't
like you
solve
and me are in
anything, right.
agreement.
No, this is what I'm saying.
So how are we
Riots
gonna
a side effect of these problems. They're
Right.
not. They're not the answer. They're not necessarily the cause. Riots are a side
And-
effect.
and
Just
once you- and the
somebody gets-
solution-
somebody
Or a
has
symptom.
The
cancer
the
and they get sick. They feel
Well,
ill.
I think the peaceful protests that are happening across this country right now are a very good thing because they're drawing attention to an issue that's been long overlooked.
That's right.
And I totally agree.
Brian,
I totally
let me
agree.
take us out.
I'm not saying I
okay.
support. I for the record, I don't support anyone rioting, but I understand.
neither.
I understand where it comes
And
from.
so does Donald
And-
I
Rumsfeld.
understand too.
And yeah, so does Donald Rumsfeld. And any population that has been systemically oppressed for any given number of years will eventually rise up, and it's rarely ever does it happen in a peaceful means.
All right, Brian.
I just want to say the guy that stomped in a police officer's a police vehicle's window, that guy has a $500,000 bail, whereas the policemen who are
Already
charged,
Yeah.
you know, maybe
They're free.
$350,000.
I just want to take this out, bringing it back to plutocracy real quick. So I'm saying these are all involved. This all comes down to having accountability and representation in your government, dude. And people got no accountability, no representation. I think as long as we have a fundamentally corrupt system, I don't think we're going to totally handle this police brutality problem.
And that's
I don't see how police are going to be accountable if our legislators aren't accountable.
And that's what I'm talking about Baltimore. People talking about it's a Democrat-controlled city, it's a black-controlled city, and yet they still have all these problems. I think it's a disgrace that you have all these members of the black community elected, but yet you still have these ghettos. So standing in Baltimore, people are rioting.
So let's start placing bets on
financial institutions. That goes back to the financial crisis with the predatory lending.
No, it's the Democratic Party. They impoverishing them.
the welfare.